she would be worse off than Humpty Dumpty, which is like a tall order because that man has issues. I am not at home. I am sitting here in front of my china cabinet. As you can tell, I have lots of china that I love to display in my display cabinets. Hi, this is Steph. I am clearly not at home, which means I am on my work trip right now, but I am here. I have marvelous news for you. I have finished a book. Yeah, I know. I didn't think I was going to do it. And I am really glad that I was able to. I will say that the reason why I found this book pretty hard to finish was because of the fact that it is a very sad book. And I have been tired over the last couple of weeks just because of all of the stuff I've been doing. I am here now. I finished the book and I'm here to talk to you about this. Before we get too far into anything, I'm Steph. This is my channel, Cursed or Crushing It. And today we are broadcasting live, not really live, from Chicago on my birthday. You might be asking yourself, when is your birthday, Steph? I'll tell you, it's Tuesday, which is today. Anyway, I am 31 today. So that's pretty cool. I'm really excited to be coming to you guys today for, a nice little fun birthday reaction. In the spirit of birthday reactions, my fun drink tonight is an old fashioned that I convinced the bar to let me to take to go, which is why it's in a fun little plastic cup instead of a sleek little old fashioned glass. This is my second old fashioned of the evening. I will tell you that as well. Take that how you will. It will probably become relevant to us. My other fun drink tonight is a liquid IV in a Smart Water water bottle. This is no longer Smart Water. It hasn't been Smart Water for a couple of weeks, but it is liquid IV and I'm going to drink it because, like I said, I'm on my second old fashioned. So there we go. So before we get into everything, I just want to remind you to do all of the YouTube things. So if you like this video, please like it. If you dislike this video, please tell me why in the comments. And if you would like to contribute to my master list of romance fantasy vampires for my ranking tier list that I am slowly starting to curate, please also comment those down below. I would love some suggestions and I will read whole series if it's relevant for the vampires. I am very down to read books and I'm very down to do homework on these vampires. I want to do this for you, for me, for my entertainment, for your entertainment. I think it's a lot of fun. So please comment your ideas down below if there are any vampires that you are worried that I might not get to, that you would like to see included. I will also keep a playlist running of those for all of the vampires that are going to be going into our vampire tier list. Everyone can see what we're doing as we're building out our list. I'm actually super excited about that. Just an update on the Twilight and Midnight Sun tandem read. So obviously I have been traveling a lot. I have barely gotten through the book that I'm going to talk about today. It took me almost exactly a month. It took me just under a month. So I started this book on November 16th and I finished it on December 14th. So 2 days ago. It took a while to read because it was, like I said, it was very sad. And I have not had any progress on Twilight or Midnight Sun. So I am just really glad that I am doing a deep read of both of those books and tabbing and annotating the life out of them. So there we go. That, I think, covers everything from the beginning. If you are new here, thank you so much for giving me a chance. If you are returning, thank you so much for coming back. And if you would like to see some more of me in your feed, and if you'd like to be notified when I post new videos, please consider subscribing and turning on your notifications for me. I would really appreciate it. I would really like to reach 100 subscribers as my first goal. So if you would like to contribute to that, I will be super duper appreciative of you. Thank you for being here. So without further ado, let's get into our book for the day. So I'm obviously in a different space than I usually am, which means that my notes, so usually I try to position my notes right behind the camera so that I'm looking at the camera as I'm referencing everything. I don't really have a good way to put notes right up behind my camera. So I'm going to be reading my notes So like, here's where you are. I'm going to be reading them down here. If you see me looking down this way, I am looking at the notes right now. I am really sorry if that is distracting. That's just kind of what I have to work with right now. Okay, let's get into it. I can't snap with both of my hands. Anyway. Okay. So today's novel is Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stuart. This book was a Booker Prize winner for the year 2020. It was also a finalist for the National Book Award. And so the Booker Prize, I have learned, it is awarded to books that are specifically printed in the UK and Ireland. Douglas Stuart, the author of Shuggie Bain, this is his debut novel, which is, coming out with a slam if he's already winning like prizes and stuff. So like, good for Douglas. We love to see it. Breaking into this book, what is it about? How is it set up? This book is organized into 5 different parts. So each part has a year and a location attributed to it, and that kind of sets the scene of both when we are and where we are. And so, yeah, we have 5 different snapshots of like 5 different points of time that we explore throughout this book. And so each of the locations that are like the titular parts of each part of the book, these locations are neighborhoods that are in and around Glasgow in Scotland. I incorrectly thought that we were in Ireland for a while, which is on me. That's totally on me. I had Google while I was reading this, and I had Google afterwards, so that's on me. I'm sorry. So as I was looking this up, setting myself like in Scotland to kind of like see what this scene is, I looked up like the driving distance. 2 of the locations in particular that we go to that are like specific neighborhoods, they're called Sighthill and Pithead. These are kind of on either side of Edinburgh, and there's a lot of driving mentioned in this book. So that would just made a lot more sense for me in terms of being able to wrap my head around exactly where everything is and why certain moves end up being so important to some of the characters in the book. Speaking of the characters in the book, speaking of just the book itself, obviously, because we're here for a review. Hi. Let's just get into the overview. Let's get into setting the scene. First, let's take a drink. There are no slurping sounds allowed on my channel, just by the way. This is a safe place. This book, just as an overview, is primarily about Shuggie Bain. I bet that you did not guess that from the title of this book. So, rest assured, this book is about a boy named Shuggie Bain. He is the son of Agnes Bain, and he is also the youngest of 3 siblings. So when we first meet Shuggie, we are in 1992. He is 15 years old, and we find very quickly that he is living by himself in a tenement in Glasgow. He calls his room specifically a bedsit. From what I could see and from what I could tell of this from the way that he is describing it for his point of view, we learned that a bedsit is basically just like a hotel room, such as this one, where you just, have like a bed and a kitchenette. And he is working at the supermarket. So a supermarket that's like really close by to him. They're kind of everywhere, as one could imagine. And he is currently going to school. He is like in secondary school because he's 15. But we learn very quickly that he is dreaming of being a hairdresser. And so he's just in school basically to like get the credentials that he needs to be able to go to like hairdresser school, esthetician school. So that's his dream. So immediately after we meet 15-year-old Shuggie in 1992, we are immediately just like drop kicked back into 1981, where Shuggie is 5 years old. And in this scene, in this part of the book, we meet his mother, Agnes. Her name is Agnes Bain. So when we meet Agnes, Agnes is living with her parents as well as her man and her children. They're all living in the same apartment unit. And Agnes, her man, and her kids, her 3 kids, so these 5 individuals, they are all living in a single room inside of Agnes's mother's and father's apartment. So in total, there are 7 people living in this apartment. Agnes's mom, Agnes's dad, Agnes's man, and Agnes's 3 children. Agnes is the star of the show. Make no mistake. When we first meet her, the scene that we're specifically meeting her in, Agnes is playing cards with her mom and with her friends. And these are friends from like the apartment building and from like around the immediate area. They're all playing this card game, you know, they're having a general fun time as the gals playing cards. When things are kind of like winding down, the catalog comes out, and this is the shopping catalog, because keep in mind this is 1981, so you can't Amazon shop, you have to do catalog shopping. So they, you know, call up the catalog, you know, pull it up, and they give them all the numbers and stuff. For my target audience, this is very normal. So if you're young though, the catalog, you have to like call them and yeah, all that good stuff. Anyway, when they start talking about the catalog, this eventually leads to money. So one of the ladies that's in this group, she kind of collects the catalog and she places the catalog orders, and then she kind of places those on credit for the other women, and then the other women pay her back in installments. So at the end of this card game, they all basically start to settle their debts or work to pay off their debts that they have with the catalog with the lady that is running the catalog for them. So this whole scene, and the reason why I'm harping on this whole scene surrounding the catalog and surrounding paying off the catalog in particular, it is a really nice and like kind of subtle introduction to one of the main themes of the story. No one has enough, and everyone really needs like something. Whether that's clothes, whether that's food, whether that's a man, whether that is, you know, just money itself. Pretty much everyone is in need of something here. That remains a very strong theme throughout the rest of the book, where everyone is in need of something and they're either helping each other get that thing, or they're like stepping on someone's head effectively to try and get whatever it is they need. So money, clothes, food, drinks, whatever it is that they need. They're really trying to make it work, and they're really trying to put themselves ahead to be able to get the things that they need to survive. During the same scene, we also are like lightly introduced to Agnes's alcoholism. So she, in this scene, is drinking a stout. She is drinking with, quote, long mouthfuls. But while she's doing that, she is wishing that she was drinking something stronger, like vodka, specifically because she basically wants to be drunk. And so when we first see Agnes drinking alcohol, we see really early on that Agnes has a taste for alcohol and that Agnes has a budding alcohol problem. And I think it's really described well and like kind of just put really nicely with this quote from page 20, mind you. Agnes rolled her eyes and took a long mouthful of flat stout. It was too slow a bus for where she wanted to go, so she filled her gullet with stout and wished it was vodka. To describe alcoholism in, you know, 2 sentences, I feel like this kind of like hits the nail on the head, right? I'm drinking the stout. I am drinking my beer. I feel good about drinking it, but I want to be on a faster bus. I mean, destination drinking, right? That's what my stepdad calls it. Destination drinking at best is questionable, right? Like, to drink to get drunk, it's problematic. Let's just call it for what it is. It is problematic to drink with the intention of, I'm gonna get drunk right now. To see it described in this way as like a bus that she's trying to get on, I think that it's really interesting for describing like how an alcoholic might view alcohol as more of a tool to get to where they want to be rather than the enjoyment itself. So like, I took a train tonight, right? I feel like for taking an airplane, that gets you to where you want to be faster. For taking a train, you get to enjoy the scenery along the way. I feel like in most instances where people don't necessarily have like a problem with alcohol or like problems with really desiring to get very drunk all the time, I feel like you can appreciate the ride for what it is, right? Like, so I'm drinking this because it tastes good and because I like it. I'm not drinking it to get drunk. Honestly, if I could drink it without getting drunk, I would probably like that a little bit better. I really like how it tastes. I like how it smells. I like the train ride of it all. You know, I like the experience of drinking it, the experience of everything. Big like demarcations between destination drinking versus like drinking for the enjoyment of the drink that you are drinking. From here, once we are introduced to Agnes, the book then starts setting up the family. And so the family consists of Agnes, her daughter Caddy, her son Leek, her youngest son Shuggie. It also consists of her man. So her man is named Big Shug. His given name is Hugh. I have not looked up the Hugh to Shug continuum on this, but I mean, 2 characters in this book are named are named some variation of Shug, and their given name is Hugh. So like, I'm sure that it's like that there's like something in there about it actually being like a real nickname, but I couldn't tell you. We find out though very quickly that Big Shug is not faithful to Agnes, and Agnes takes high offense to this, which I totally get, right? If I was being cheated on, if I knew that my husband was like going out on me, I would be like, okay, well, you need to rethink that, first of all. And second of all, I would really resent it that he was doing that. And wouldn't you know, Agnes also resents this. So her and I are aligned on this. It is about one of the only things that we are aligned on in this book. But yeah, no, I am totally with you, Agnes. You deserve better. And no one deserves a spouse or a partner that cheats on them. So let's just be real here. No one deserves that. Agnes knows that Big Shug is not faithful to her, and she like high key just resents it. But that, coupled with her alcoholism, just kind of like catapults her into like an even worse place, like overall. You know, like when things like aren't just like straight additive, you know, like 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, 2 + 2 suddenly equals 6 because the 2's just kind of like synergize off of each other. That's what's happening here. This is all kind of adding up to like very angry Agnes more than just like the straight addition of the 2. We see like really, really early on in this book that Agnes is not in like a healthy state of mind. She puts herself and her son, her youngest son, Shuggie, our titular character, she puts them both in imminent danger. And the way that I would describe this, I won't say exactly what it is, I would consider that to be a spoiler, but the way that I would describe the way that she puts them into danger and like the chain of events leading up to it and then following it immediately, it really screams to me that Agnes is crying out for help. And if she's not necessarily crying out for help, then she's definitely crying out to see if anyone cares. Like that was really what read to me from this like first very shocking scene that illustrates exactly how unhealthy her mental state is in this moment. I think that it is both, a cry for help, but also a cry to make sure that she is actually making sound to the people around her, and that the people around her care enough to A, hear that sound, and B, respond to it appropriately. And luckily for Agnes, luckily for Shuggie, the response is there. The thing that she's doing, the situation that she's kind of started, it is swiftly dealt with, and it is like, it's sorted out immediately. And so she's able to get that reinforcement of like, we care about you, and that not only that you stay alive, but like we care that you stay healthy and that you stay safe is really the best way to put that. And in this opening too, so right on the heels of this event happening, Caddy, the oldest daughter, she is able to see the aftermath of this as well. So we see the immediate aftermath from her point of view, which is a little bit farther away, but she knows that something has happened with her mother, and she knows that it's probably best for her to stay away. So Caddy goes looking for her brother, and she looks for him in this like pallet storage area. And while she's looking for him in this pallet storage area, she is actively being ambushed by a bunch of teenage boys who are like her age or maybe just a little bit younger. And these boys are asking her like, hey, what's your favorite football team? And football is in American soccer, proper football. So they're like, saying, who's your favorite football team? But they're also being like super menacing about it. They are literally threatening her with a Glasgow smile. If you think of like the Joker, you know how he has a smile that was extended beyond his mouth via, a knife or something like that extends to his ears? That is a Glasgow smile. So they are threatening her with a Glasgow smile if she likes the wrong football team. And there's a lot to unpack there. And I don't know that I necessarily am going to unpack all of it, but just like the sectarianism, I think that's the right word, just like being so hard into, this is my lane, this is my section, this is what I believe in. The fact that they are so just like one track, literally a football team, that they would be willing to consider giving someone a Glasgow smile because of them not liking that football team or liking a rival to that football team, to me is like wild to think about. But like, this was very much a time where this was happening. So I think this is a really important and a really poignant and like cool way, and very like, quick and swift way to illustrate what exactly kind of environment everyone's in. So everyone's kind of really polarized into their own corners. But a big thing that comes up in terms of this like sectarianism and sectionalism is the Protestant versus Catholic thing. So throughout the book, you hear people saying like, you're just some no good Catholic. You're just some no good Protestant. They call them proddies. Like, you're just some no good proddy. Like, I guess othering is the best way to put it. The extreme amount of othering that groups are doing to each other to kind of like carve out their own selves as distinct from one another. It is pretty wild to read about. I mean, that's certainly something I've never encountered in my life, but I was also born after this book ends. So of course I don't know that. Also, I'm not Scottish, as you can probably tell. So the fact that this is the backdrop and this is the world in which these kids are living and in which Agnes is living, where everyone is like so, neatly, I guess, sorted into these different groups, and that these groups stay together and like don't really commingle except with violence. That I thought that this was just a really clever and strong way to show this theme. Caddy, when we first get to see her point of view, she is actively running away from these boys who are threatening her with a Glasgow smile for her football team preference. And in doing so, she finds her brother Leek. They talk, and then the story just kind of continues from there. So Caddy is safe from these boys. Just in case you're wondering, don't worry. Caddy is okay. The story kind of kicks off when the family picks up and moves to Pithead, when they move out of Agnes's mother's house. And this story really is about how Agnes and her family, including Shuggie, mostly Shuggie, honestly. I would say that most of the point of views in this book are from Agnes and from Shuggie. This book is primarily about how the two of them navigate through life in Pithead, and what all that means for them in like their life afterward. So I would say that this book especially focuses on how Agnes and Shuggie specifically navigate through life as individuals, but also as a pair. So Agnes and Shuggie have a very strong bond in this book. And I think that it's really cool to see, because Agnes obviously is struggling. She's an alcoholic, and Shuggie, he struggles in his own ways. And the love and understanding that they hold for each other throughout the book is just really heartwarming to see, and really touching, and like really tragic, because Agnes is an alcoholic. But it's really, really sweet. And because we see Shuggie's point of view as a young child, like with the thoughts of a young child, you can really appreciate why exactly he thinks what he does about his mother. Because in a lot of ways, Shuggie doesn't feel like Agnes can really do wrong, whereas her older children are completely disillusioned, and they see exactly the kinds of awful things that their mom does, and they recognize them as bad. So seeing these things through Shuggie's eyes, it's a really interesting way to see that kind of story, and it makes me feel like I can understand a lot more the devotion that people can have to the people that hurt them that they love. So just some like overall commentary about this book. I wanted to talk about like Shuggie. Basically all of like my major commentary is about Shuggie, which a lot of the book is in his perspective, so this is unsurprising. So Shuggie, one thing to know, and that I've already, talked about a little bit, Shuggie is utterly devoted to his mother. And he's devoted in a way that is both like admirable and like slightly concerning. But his devotion is like completely consistent throughout the entire book. He admires her. He emulates her in his own way, like ways that are kind of surprising. He takes a lot of pride in his appearance. He does his hair very nicely every day. He emulates his mom in like the ways and things that she values most about her own self and her own appearance. So it's really cool because it feels just like, the apple versus the tree, right? And he was the apple that fell right next to the tree. It's really cool to kind of see the two of them and how much devotion they have for one another, but especially on Shuggie's end, how much devotion and love he has for his mother. And throughout the book, because of this devotion and because of this admiration, as Agnes's condition worsens, Shuggie is extremely slow to dismantle his view of his mother. So Shuggie is not accepted by his peers. His peers basically, like, they call him gay, but like in a bad way. So this is written with Scottish slang. This is a quote from the book. I don't use derogatory names for people's sexuality, but Shuggie, by basically every child and adult in this book except for Agnes, they all call him a poof or a poofter or wee poof. They all, like, people have a lot of very negative things to say about him because of their perception of his sexuality. Shuggie in the book is described as coming off as gay in his actions, in how he presents himself. With most of the people that Shuggie encounters in his life, including his dad, including his siblings, including his teachers, which granted he goes to a Catholic school. So, but including his teachers, the kids that are his age, his siblings, his own father, his uncles, all of that kind of stuff. Everyone has something terrible to say about his sexuality and about how he carries himself, and because he carries himself as someone who is abnormal. Agnes is the only person in this entire book who never once says something derogatory about him in that way. And I think that because she accepts him on such a critically core level of who he is, and the fact that she answers to him in a positive way to the aspects about himself that people are very much like harping on him for and mean about, I think that plays a lot into the fact that Shuggie is not really equipped to dismantle his image of his mother, his very positive image of his mother. And I think that it tracks. I think that makes total sense. If the one person in your life that is completely accepting of you, that never makes you feel less than, that never makes you feel like you have to cover up, if they are slowly turning into like a rotted shell of themselves, I think that it would be a little bit harder to accept that, and to accept that that person is flawed when that person has been so important and supportive of you. So I understand it. Also, Shuggie was very young when she started her alcoholism, so it's hard for him to understand, even from the get-go, what exactly is wrong with her. Yeah, I have here, Agnes never makes him feel like the weird kid. Like literally every single other character in this book says they all call him weird. They all call him a poof. They all say, something's wrong with you. And he notices and he feels like he's a weirdo and he doesn't like it. And Agnes is the only person that does not specifically make him feel that way. So even though he is constantly ridiculed for this, Shuggie takes great pride in his appearance. He keeps a clean appearance. In Pithead, there is this is near like a mining area, so they have like a lot of soot and a lot of dust everywhere. When they are living there, Shuggie keeps a clean appearance. He keeps himself free of dust. He doesn't let coal get on him. He takes pride in who he is and what he looks like. He combs his hair neatly. He protects the dew, honestly. So like when people want to like muss up his hair and stuff like you do to like a little kid, he's like, "Ooh, excuse you, I just parted this. Can we not?" And like, that's cute, right? I would, a little businessman, I don't know. But so he, takes great pride in both his personal appearance in terms of like how he keeps his hair and stuff, but he also dresses well. So his mom sets him up to be able to dress well. He describes wearing like little gangster suits, and so does Agnes. So, like a dark shirt and like his ties and stuff, and like a nice little pair of slacks, maybe a jacket. He likes to wear his little gangster suits, and his mom likes to dress him up in his little gangster suits, and he loves to wear them. So like Shuggie is this like, polished little boy that's just walking around, and people are harping on him for it. This is one of the illustrations where I can see why he really takes such a shine to Agnes and why it's so hard for him to dismantle that image that he has of Agnes, because her like go-to thing whenever people are being like, "Ooh, why are you wearing that mink coat? Like, don't you have like no money?" She's like, "Yeah, what of it? It takes no money to take pride in your appearance." So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And I think about that sometimes. I guess Agnes has had a little bit of an influence on me because, you got to take some pride in your appearance. In addition to like these cute little outfits that Shuggie's like roaming around this book in, Agnes also will like sit with him and play jewelry shop with him. And so if on her end, it definitely like encourages Shuggie to go for like the finer things in life and to develop a taste for fine things. But then on Shuggie's end, he's able to have that creativity. When they play jewelry shop, what he'll do, she'll lay out the jewelry that she has, right? All the jewelry in her box. And then he'll go through and he'll like put together sets. He'll like make suggestions for her based off of her outfit. And they play jewelry shop. And it seems like a really fun way of make-believe. And I think that this specific instance of play where they're specifically playing jewelry shop, I think that this contributes in a huge way to why Agnes and Shuggie have the relationship that they do. Because Agnes is able to level with Shuggie through playing this game in a way that speaks directly into his soul and that speaks loudly right into his soul. So I totally get it, and I can totally get how this kind of thing would breed that devotion from Shuggie for his mother. So it makes sense. And like Agnes likes playing the game too, like it's very sweet. And when they talk about playing this game, I thought it was just the sweetest thing in the world. It makes sense, again, why Shuggie is so devoted to his mother. Throughout the book, Shuggie is accused of being gay. He's called a poof by everyone. And by the time he's like 7, 8-ish, when he's like really starting to like develop a sense of like, oh, other people's opinion of me beyond my mother, like this all matters, he starts having this desire to be a quote normal boy. He has this desire to be a normal boy. And so when he tries to assimilate with the normal boys, when he tries to fit in with them, the things that they talk about, namely like sex, even at like the ripe age of like 9 to 11, these boys are already like laser focused. They're like, we want to have sex with the girls. This is our whole thing. And like, we can do it right now. We're 11 years old. There's no consequences, like, which is wild as a starter. When these boys are talking like in this really crass way about the things that they want to do to the girls that are like in the classes and stuff, Shuggie just doesn't get it. He's like, I mean, the girls are nice, but like, I like their hair, I like their outfits, but like I don't you know, I don't want to like have sex with them or like kiss them, or they talk a lot about fingering in this book, like the boys do. He's like, I don't really want to do that. That doesn't sound like a fun time to me. And so because of this and because of the other boys talking about that, he just feels like an alien, it seems like, compared to the other boys. While Shuggie is being accused of being a poof by the other boys in his area, he one day like finds this old washing machine. He's like hanging out by it, or like he sees it. He sees like a bunch of like scrap stuff, and among that is an old washing machine. So he's over there. He's kind of like playing around with it. He sees another boy from the neighborhood in there, and that boy ends up assaulting him. Meanwhile, the entire time this boy is like being like, oh, you're queer, oh, you're a poof, oh, there's something wrong with you. This boy literally assaults Shuggie, and then Shuggie like doesn't understand what's happened to him because he's, like 7 or 8. Like he doesn't know what's happened. He just knows that he's been hurt. So Shuggie is assaulted by this boy when he's like going to hang out with like this old abandoned washing machine. When he is assaulted, this really sets a very unfortunate and a very sad tone for how people just walk all over Shuggie throughout the rest of the book that we see. So, like the next 10 years or so, a little bit less than 10 years. Just like overall thinking about the fact that this is a story about a young queer boy in Scotland in the 80s and 90s, in the 80s and early 90s. I think that stories like this are just extremely important. Number one, so that we don't repeat history and so that we don't repeat this like hatred and bigotry towards queer people especially, but also so that we can understand the ramifications of treating people like this, and so that we can adequately support people who have lived experiences that are similar to this. So while this book can at times be very hard to read, I think it is also so important, and I can see why it won the Booker Prize, why it was shortlisted for the National Book Award, because these stories are just incredibly important, and the way that it's told here too, it really sucks you in. It's just laid out so well. I don't want to give away spoilers or anything, but like, if the meat of this book doesn't get to you, especially like in the later half, if the story itself doesn't get to you, if you read the acknowledgments, that will just completely shatter you from there. Like, this book is just so incredibly strong and so incredibly sad at times too, which is why it took me so long to read. These kinds of stories, like I said, are extremely important. And if we don't write them down, if we don't read them, and if we don't discuss them, even when it sucks, and even when it's hard to discuss them, and even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, we're doomed to forget. And if we're doomed to forget, then we're doomed to repeat. But I don't need a repeat of any of like the homophobia or anything like this that's in this book. I don't think anyone does. Like, it's so important to remember history, to document history, and to document stories, like, so that we understand and so that we don't repeat ourselves, so that we do better, so that we can learn from our mistakes. That's my soapbox. Let's get into some spoilers for this book. I am not going to go like over the entire freaking thing because no one has time for that. Also, definitely not me. It is... I think it's pretty late. I don't know. Everything on all of my stuff right now is in mountain time, and I am not in mountain time. So I don't actually know what time zone I'm in. Just work travel things. But okay, let's dive into some spoilers. So picking up where I kind of left us in my overall commentary in terms of like what's happening, our book really picks up when the Bain family moves to Pithead. So Pithead is where we see the majority of our story. And when in Pithead, Big Shug, or, Shuggie's dad, he moves the entire family out to a house that is sight unseen Agnes is super excited because she is going to have her own dedicated front door for the first time in her life, which is like, go off queen. I understand that. And yeah, Big Shug, he moves the whole family out there in his taxi because he is a taxi driver. He moves the whole family out there, sight unseen, and he's like, guess what, guys? This is our house. And leading up to that, he gets these cool red suitcases, 2 of them, and he starts packing them. He packs them very diligently. He, opens them up. He like rearranges his stuff, makes sure all of his stuff is there. And, Big Shug is packing. Importantly, though, Big Shug is only packing for himself in these 2 red suitcases. And Agnes is, she's putting stuff for herself and for the kids near the suitcases. Big Shug is not putting those items into the actual cases. So Agnes is like, this is weird. I don't know about this one, Chief. But, she kind of puts it out of her mind. She grabs her 2 green suitcases and she packs up herself and her children into these 2 green suitcases. What is the significance of these 2 green suitcases? Well, I'm so glad you asked. We have a very convenient memory sequence here. We find out that Agnes used both of these green suitcases to leave her first husband, the good Catholic. That is how he's remembered. Agnes uses these 2 green suitcases to leave her husband with her 2 oldest children, so Caddy and Leek, right? And so she uses them to leave him for Shug. Okay, the flashback sequence that we immediately go into when we are introduced to the red versus the green suitcases, we find out that Agnes's 2 oldest children are from her first husband. He is the good Catholic. Agnes left him in the middle of the night for Big Shug, and she took both of her kids with her. When Agnes comes out of her house with her husband, so when she gets into his taxi, because he's a taxi driver on the night shift, he immediately clocks, obviously, that she has brought both of her children, and she loads her suitcases into the back of the car. She gets into the car with her 2 kids, and he is looking in the back in the window, and he's like, guess who I didn't bring?
My kids.
Guess what we talked about, Agnes?
Neither of us were going to bring our kids with us on this little adventure. You and I were going to go alone.
So they're off to a booming start in their brand new relationship, right? Agnes has basically broken his trust of, oh yeah, I'm totally going to leave my kids behind. And he's like, yeah, sure, me too. And she immediately breaks that trust. He is immediately resentful, which, like, yeah, I understand you just left all of your kids. I think he has like 3 or 4. And this whole scene and like the back and forth between the 2 of them where he's like, I thought this was a fresh start, and she's like, I'm not leaving my kids. We like really see illustrated just perfectly, and kind of for the first time, but not really. But we see it like, up in lights for the first time. Agnes is only looking out for herself. She is only interested in her own stuff that she wants to do. She's not interested in anything else. Do not stop, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Agnes only wants to do what Agnes wants to do. And Agnes wants to bring her kids into her new life. So guess who is going to accept her kids into his life? Big Shug, especially if he wants Agnes. He's like surprised at this. It's kind of stupid, I think. Of course she's bringing her kids. She is way too selfish to actually give up really anything. This whole thing, she's leaving her husband for someone that she perceives is going to be better for her own selfish stuff, and she's bringing her kids into this unknown, again, for her own selfish reasons, because she didn't want to leave them behind. And she even admits that her husband that she's leaving, like, he makes good money. He's extremely devoted. He is a family man. He wants to be there for his kids. And she's like, yeah, no, actually, I don't want you to have them. Sorry. I know you do a great job with them and all, but they're mine. Sorry. So her selfishness is like really highlighted here. This is something that comes back over and over and over again. Agnes is extremely selfish. After we have this flashback to the significance of the 2 green suitcases, which Agnes uses to leave her first husband, we then have, like an Uno reverse is then played on the deck by Big Shug. So Big Shug, he like comes in, and he's like, hey family, look at our new house. Isn't that cool? Why don't you go on inside? He unpacks his taxi, with everything except for the 2 red suitcases. Agnes takes those 2 red suitcases inside. And Big Shug, he doesn't really say anything about it. But then he picks up his 2 red suitcases and he's like, well, family, see ya. I'm out of here. And he leaves Agnes. And he's like, congratulations, Agnes. Here's your home. I'm just going to scoot on out of here. And he effectively breaks up with Agnes. Agnes is in pieces. She is not having a good time, as one can probably imagine, just being dumped by he's not even technically her husband because she didn't even get divorced from the first one, but she's being dumped by her man's, the father of her child, Shuggie. So, yeah, she is now out here in Pithead and she's just kind of despondent. And she's like, where am I going to get money from? I don't work. I'm a mother full time to my 3 children. This is not something that I am like equipped to do. And immediately she is the gossip object of the Pithead ladies and the Pithead neighborhood. So yeah, she like this does not sit well with her, and she takes a lot of offense to Big Shug leaving them, which like go off. Yeah, that makes total sense. But so when they're first at Pithead and when Agnes is first dealing with the fallout of Big Shug leaving them, her daughter Caddy starts to just beg her to go back to her grandma's house, to Caddy's grandma's house. So to Agnes's mother's house. She's just begging her to go back to Sighthill, to go back to that apartment with them. And Agnes, being selfish, she is like, no, we're not going to do that. Big Shug might come back here, and if he comes back here, I'm going to be ready. We're going to be here waiting for him. And that's exactly what she does. She clings with both hands to the idea of Big Shug coming back to her in Pithead, in the house that he abandoned them in. And from Big Shug's point of view, this man is like the worst. Just so you know, Big Shug is like public enemy number 1 in this book, aside from alcohol, just generally. When we have this whole, vignette of, I can't leave because Big Shug might come back, but also he just broke my heart because like, who does this to someone? Just promises them a new house and a new life together and then just abandons them in said house. We get this quote about Big Shug's like perspective on it, and of course my Kindle just went to sleep. Awake. Okay. We get this quote that says, she had loved him and he had needed to break her completely to leave her for good. Agnes Bain was too rare a thing to let someone else love. It wouldn't do to leave pieces of her for another man to collect and repair later. So not only is Big Shug wanting to break up with her and wanting to kind of hurt her, he wants to shatter her into so many pieces that she can never be put back together again. She would be worse off than Humpty Dumpty, which is like a tall order because that man has issues. So the fact that he just wants to completely shatter her is absolutely crazy, but I think that speaks to Big Shug, right? This is the man that resents a mother bringing her children when she wants to start a new life. This is the man that is just cheating on her left and right while he's out at night driving taxis, right? He is cheating on her when they are living under her mother's roof, just completely embarrassing her and completely not even thinking of her. This is the same man who, instead of breaking up with her, just wants to absolutely destroy her. And as far as I can tell, he succeeded. So, like, good job, Big Shug. Fuck you. So now that Big Shug is basically gone, he kind of like pops around every now and then. Agnes just dismantles, and she sinks deeper and deeper and deeper into her alcoholism and gets worse as the days go on and as the years go on. In her alcoholism and in this new place that she's in Pithead, she meets the other ladies that are there, the other moms, and they turn out to be total enablers, like 100%. They enable her to get on 2 forms of social services. So she is on disability and child support, so she's able to collect twice a week for money to sustain her family. One of the ladies, Bridie, I'm assuming it's Bridie because that's how it's spelled. I don't think it's Birdie. Bridie has the bright idea to introduce Agnes to Valium. Isn't that fun? Isn't that a fun thing to mix with alcohol? Valium? Wow. Maybe you should do that first, Bridie. Luckily for all of us, luckily for Agnes, honestly, she doesn't really like take to Valium so much. Like she knows her lane. She wants to stay in her lane. She wants to stay in alcoholism, and that's fine. When she's like first like talking to these ladies, and when Bridie tries to introduce her to the wonders of fucking Valium, all of these ladies that are out there that are like standing on the street. This is the scene. They're all standing on the street, just like talking to each other and gossiping over a fence. Some random fence somewhere, like a little white picket fence that one could, talk over easily. All of these ladies, they're kind of standing around. They invite her to come, like, hang out with them. And they're like, oh, yeah, have a drink with us. Have a drink. And, they, like, produce a bottle of vodka and they, like, fill up a tea mug with it. They hand it to Agnes, who then starts, like, gulping it down like water in, like, big mouthfuls, which, like, actually, speaking of which... Why is Liquid IV so salty? After they are inviting her out here to this, wives club, or the ladies club, I should say, over this fence where they're all like drinking tea and just kind of chatting, and Bridie is hawking Valium, I guess, to everyone. They offer her some vodka. They empty out a mug and they, put some vodka in it for her. And she immediately just starts taking, big ass mouthfuls of it like it's water. And immediately these ladies clock her. They're like, oh, I see you're an alcoholic. And Agnes is like, I mean, you are too. We're all drinking vodka out here on the street in like broad daylight. Like, why are you pointing out me? You want to know why? Because those ladies totally fucking tricked her. They all are like, oh no, we're drinking tea. And they like show her tea. They show her their tea mugs, which are in fact filled with tea. And she's just like, okay, well, that was nice, everyone. But yeah, she basically gets like tricked into outing herself as an alcoholic to them, which is just like super shady from these ladies. And honestly, it sets like the exact tone that every single one of these ladies follows throughout the book. They are awful to each other, to Agnes, like to their kids, to their husbands. Like they are just like awful people. And Agnes deserved better friends, especially friends that aren't going to try and get her into freaking Valium. Who needs that? Especially as an alcoholic. Not Agnes, I can tell you that. God. The next kind of like place where we're kind of like checking in on Agnes, she continues on this just steady decline, just punctuated at regular intervals by trauma. She is assaulted multiple times, and she is also assaulted multiple times by multiple men who she invites into her home and into her like presence, basically. So like a cab driver, but she is basically taken advantage of by like all of the men that she really comes into contact with, it seems like. And she allows these men to like come into her life and to have an opportunity to help her. And then they like literally none of them live up to it. Like they all fail. But so she keeps allowing these people in though, in the hope that someone can help. And as she is declining more and more, Shuggie at the same time is getting older and older. And so as his POVs move through time, we see them kind of morph. And we see them morph from this place of like innocence and naivety into a place where he becomes much more aware of his mother's problems and much more aware of like what's happening to her. And it all just kind of slots into place piece by piece. And it's assisted by his older brother, Leek. Seeing it from Agnes's point of view as she is like falling down basically this hole, while Shuggie is becoming more aware and kind of like rising up and like using his brain and his, logic skills and like deductive reasoning that he's learning as he gets older, as he starts doing better and kind of figuring out like, oh, this is how life can be better for me. It is really juxtaposed by the severity of Agnes's decline into alcoholism. It's really interesting to see, and it leads to a really interesting vibe in the book that is really like broken up while also staying just very overall sad and very aware of what all is happening. Because Agnes is kind of aware of how bad she's getting, but she is also in denial. So it's a little bit of both. At one point in the book, for 1 year, one golden year, Agnes is sober. And after she's been sober for, a few months, maybe like 6 or 7 months, she starts dating this guy. And this guy is the worst. He's arguably worse than Big Shug, honestly, which is saying a lot for this book. But so this guy that she starts dating, he is immediately like super weirded out by the fact that she doesn't drink anymore and by the fact that she's sober. And so he'll like drink in front of her, which she says that she's able to handle it. So like, that's whatever, let people tell you what they're comfortable with. Don't just assume. So she tells him she's comfortable with him drinking around her as long as he doesn't make her drink, she's fine with it. And he's like, well, that's weird. You should really be able to drink. But okay, yeah, whatever. I won't push this for now. And then guess what? He pushes it. After they've been dating for months and she like trusts him and she is like bringing him into her life a little bit more. After she has reached 1 year of sobriety, mind you, it's been like not even very long since she reached that milestone. This man, he takes her out to dinner and he takes her out to like a really nice dinner. And he's just like,
what if you just drank a little bit? Would it really be that bad? Like, you don't have a problem anymore. You've been off the drink for a year. What if you just had a drink? Can't you just be normal? Just have one drink.
And guess who has one fucking drink? But Agnes. And then guess who has another drink? But Agnes. And guess who has another and another? And guess who has like 5 freaking drinks before they even leave dinner? But Agnes. And then she comes home. This man delivers her home. She is piss drunk. She is like falling down on the floor. And of course, her kids, especially like her older child, Leek, because by this point, Caddy is like out of the picture. But so Leek, he sees her drunk and he sees this man that she's been dating deliver her home drunk on the floor. And he just starts laying into him. He starts yelling at him. He kicks him out of the house. And after that, this man, who I am going to say ruined Agnes's life because she was on an upward trajectory. This man, his name is Eugene. Write it down. Public enemy number 1. He is the exact reason why this book is the length that it is. It's like almost 500 pages. But without him, this book would have been like 250 max if we're only following the alcoholism. This book would have been half the length that it was if it weren't for fucking Eugene. He is the worst. I hope you hate him because I hate him too. He convinces Agnes to get back on the drink. And then of course she does because she likes him and she doesn't want him to like leave her because she's like a stick in the mud or something, which if you are sober and if you don't drink because you cannot control yourself when you do, you are not a stick in the mud. You are taking care of yourself, okay? Don't listen to anyone like fucking Eugene. But so he is the entire reason for the back half of this book, and I resent him for it so much. I would yell at him too if I was in that situation. Like, Leek would have backup. I would be yelling at him too. That is an awful thing to do to someone, to break their sobriety like that and just pressuring them like, oh yeah, just be normal, just be fun. Yeah, like what's the worst that can happen? The entire rest of this fucking book, Eugene. And then he just dips out. He doesn't even like stick around and like try and help her get sober again. Well, no, he's like, he does tell her like, I think you should get sober again. And Agnes is just like, make up your fucking mind. You're the one that told me to get back on the drink in the first place. So no, Eugene, not even respectfully or kindly. Fuck you, Eugene. In the least kind and most unpleasant way possible. Fuck you. Eugene gets her back on the drink, and basically the entire rest of the book happens with her decline. And it's really tragic to see. As you can kind of guess, Agnes dies in the end of this book. It isn't the end of this book, but Agnes does die towards the end of this book. And to my dying breath, I will always blame Eugene for her death. He is the one who got her back on the drink. her kids did not do this. Her kids didn't encourage it. Her kids encouraged her to stay sober. She would have done well had she not met Eugene. I am certain of it. So I blame her death on Eugene. Shuggie witnessed his mother die. While Shuggie is there, and while Shuggie is technically in a position where he could have helped, he does not. And I think that that is fine, because that is a traumatic thing to witness for anyone, much less like a child witnessing their parent go through that. I do not blame Shuggie. I blame Eugene 100% for it. Within minutes, she's gone. So it's there and gone in a moment. From there, we end this book with Shuggie hanging out with one of his friends. And then Shuggie gets to play spectator to his friends' like rhythm and her song and dance with her own alcoholic mother. He misses his mom very fiercely. It's her birthday, actually, when we're in this final scene. And he's missing her a lot in that moment. And so he's with his friend to kind of think about his mom, but then also to not be alone in that moment. He witnesses his friend helping out her mother. While he misses his own mom, he also just feels like a really deep sense of relief for his own life and for the fact that he doesn't have to do that anymore, and that he doesn't have to look after his mom anymore. And obviously this is sad, right? It's just like the way that grief can like show up, and the way that it shows up for him. He feels relieved at not having to do that. He's glad for himself that he can pursue his own dreams. And then by not having his mom around, he doesn't have to spend, all of his time and mental energy just saving her from herself. He feels a sense of relief that he can actually live his own life and not be dragged down by his mom. Honestly, that like revelation and seeing that for him, that hit me honestly even harder than Agnes dying, which I also cried when Agnes died. The book ends in like this place of hope that's really interesting, just kind of a breath of fresh air. It makes me hopeful for Shuggie and for his future. It makes me glad for him that his mom is dead and that he can do that. Hi. If you just skipped through the spoilers, we went through it a little bit. So, let's answer the question that we're all here for. Is Shuggie Bain cursed or crushing it? This book is absolutely crushing it. Bring tissues. If you're a crier, at least bring tissues. I am definitely a crier, and this ending of this book really got to me. This story just was incredible. It was so powerful, and it was so incredibly sad in the end. This was definitely a departure from my normal romance, fantasy, vampire, sexy books. Shuggie Bain, absolutely crushing it. A wonderful debut novel from Douglas Stuart, and I can see why it won the Booker Prize Award for 2020. So I'm surprised it didn't win more awards, but being shortlisted for the National Book Award and getting, Booker is not an easy feat for one to do. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please leave a brain emoji. I definitely thought this was going to have more to do with like brains than it actually did. So yeah, leave a brain emoji or leave a crying emoji because I started crying. I will see you in the next one. My current read right now, as I'm like still traveling, is Under Lock and Key. This is the romance book, a cozy romance book. This is also set in Scotland, which I didn't quite realize that. I should have, right? Loch. It's literally about the Loch Ness Monster. I did not put two and two together that the Loch Ness Monster, Scotland, Shuggie Bain, Scotland, that they were all going to be in the same thing. So now I'm going to have 2 books worth of like Scottish accent and slang written out to go through. That is one thing actually in Shuggie Bain that I like. It definitely contributed to how slow I read the book, because I would go through and I would like read the accent and I would try to like read in the accent in my head. I wouldn't recommend it if that makes you read slower, because I certainly read a bunch of stuff slower. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you in the next one. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you soon with another Scottish book. Bye.